All right, everyone, welcome to Mimir's Head number 2. Today I'm going to be talking with GunshineFash, and we're going to be talking about bowling alone and the desolation of America, and we might also talk about American party politics later. If you'd like to get in on this, please send me a message on Discord. The link is down below. What's going on, man?
Okay, thanks for having me today, Mimir's Head. Basically, from my brief entry into this movement, since it's been kind of the alt right, it's I've noticed some disturbing kind of trends. I've noticed that a lot of people that enter this movement are some of them are what I would perceive as like broken people, and I think this is caused because a lot of not only deracination, but because of modernity's kind of selected
It's
for people, and it's like torn.
it's very soul crushing.
Yeah, it's nihilistic, and it seems to have produced a certain type of person that's attracted to this movement.
Hmm.
And what I'm saying is that a lot of people are just hobbyists. A lot of people are just simply in this because they're looking for like friends. They're not in this for like legitimate, I would say legitimate reasons. They're kind of looking for a social group because that's
Right.
their cultural the culture's kind of it's like I said, it's so atomized. So,
Yeah, people are definitely looking for more than just a political movement nowadays because I talk to a lot of these young men and they're very lost. They're sheep that need a shepherd, for lack of a better phrase. But you know, it's not exactly a bad thing that a nationalist movement also turns into a sociocultural one. But in case anyone isn't subscribed, I've linked his new channel down below. His other one got shoah'd. He can't live stream on it, so that's been disabled. Definitely go subscribe to him. Check that out.
well, what I'm saying is that a lot of people are fragmented and broken, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of method to help them out. It just seems like they're just stuck out there, kind of alone. And other racial groups, they have a kind of a solidarity. And
Hmm.
of course, as a white person, you're kind of out on your own, and especially the sharp division that exists kind of in the class structure. And no, I'm not trying to make it a class kind of warfare. I'm just simply saying there's for a lot of people in like the working on like the lower classes, there's not a whole lot of outlets for people to form kind of a social a social unit.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the main things that I'm trying to tackle on my channel is this unending nihilism. So I talk about that quite a lot. There are ways out of it, and part of it is becoming a part of your local community and really working on yourself and recognizing your faults and then fixing them. But in particular, you wanted to talk about a book. So if you could go ahead and
Yes, I wanted to.
get
I
into
wanted
that.
to like. I wanted to talk about Bowling Alone, which a lot of people are probably familiar with because Jared Taylor and a couple other people always mention this book as being, this Harvard liberal. He actually studied the issue of diversity because he wanted to prove that it was a good thing. It was a great thing that we should celebrate. But
Right.
instead, what he found was that it's actually something. He discovered that people are quite divided and have preference of their own group, and it actually heightens distrust of one another when you have large contingents of diverse communities. Instead of it has the adverse effect of what he thought it would have. It doesn't
And
bring people together.
this is Putnam.
Yeah,
Is
Robert
it
Putnam.
Rotterdam Putnam? Yeah. So basically, the study found that in these multicultural, multi-ethnic societies, the out-group trust and the in-group trust is lowered. So
Yes, it was interfered with. There was no social
yeah.
cohesion.
Yep, exactly.
And he also found that kind of community involvement was at a low in these places, and civics was at a low. Kind of a volunteering for like volunteerism was kind of at a low too. Nobody would volunteer for any kind of events for uh, for the community. He discovered that people kind of would just they isolated themselves. They kind of went out in kind of their shell.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've seen this sort of. It was almost like a counterculture during the early days of the internet, where you had large swaths of people who isolated themselves, especially young men. Lots of young men either were already kind of born socially awkward, but still never got the opportunity because there's no society for them to fall back on. So they end up in this endless cycle of self-hatred, and they close themselves off to the world. But
I
even the
mean,
normal people, they're
couple that with
yeah,
like, anti-white academia and the
yeah,
rampant kind of feminism that was, that was prominent, that's been prominent since the 60s, and you have quite a disastrous result. It's kind of probably why many of the school shootings are happening right now, because people are not adjusted to the present climate we have, the
yeah,
social climate.
exactly. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, no one wants to address that. Of course, they want to blame it on guns. They want to blame it on, violent video games. They want to blame it on everything else.
yeah, there's definitely there's more going on because especially in particular as a white man, you go your whole life
White,
nowadays. Yeah, white man, you go
white.
you go through your whole life basically being an enemy of everyone. You're the worst person in the world. You are literally Hitler, and so
Yeah.
it really drags you down, and it really puts you in a bad position. And self-hatred is the worst kind of hatred. Is next to hatred of your in-group, self-hatred is pretty goddamn bad because that affects your entire life.
Well, a lot of people, the self hatred is just kind of a token, I think, that many people in the upper classes started doing, and it eventually trickled down, like many other things, to the lower classes. Because that seems to be the trends. It seems to trickle downwards in terms of like social development. I know I'm getting very kind of class centric here, and you
Well,
might
it's
think
it's a
I'm a
valid point.
Marxist, but I'm actually not. I'm not a Marxist because I make kind of this class this sharp class division, which there is in America, whether we want to acknowledge or not. There are social mores that are different between each classes, and that kind of goes within ethnicity too. I would say a lot. So a lot of this like stuff, this white self hatred, is actually being taught in
Yeah, yeah.
very exclusive like daycares in Manhattan and New York. They actually thrive off this. They live off this.
Yeah, they do, and they certainly like. It's a pretty good indicator, of course, as we know. Higher intelligence usually correlates with a better economic status, and but also at the same time, higher intelligence usually leads people to a bit more mental illness, a bit more neuroticism, which can lead a lot towards this sort of self hatred.
Well,
So
oy vey, oy
it's
vey. There's a particular ethnic group with lots of schizophrenia.
I wonder what that could be.
I
Yeah,
wonder who that could be.
chosen people. Let me tell you.
They have an allele. They have an allele guy.
But they already have like higher intelligence people who are already kind of rich already have like a baseline level of neuroticism, and you combine that with the fact that modern life is so soul draining, this constant chase after finances, and now
Well,
you've
that's
got
that's true, but there's like outliers that in that particular group of people that are like probably been born in like working class parents that don't know how to, don't know how to like really develop their child, if they do, in case they have someone like Ted Kaczynski, because
right.
that was his scenario. That Uncle Ted, that was kind of his scenario. He didn't. He wasn't socially. He wasn't. He wasn't very socially adjusted.
Yeah, that as well. And they're yeah, I think that's part of neuroticism as well. Is that
But the problem with him is that he actually had working class parents that he probably couldn't relate to. They probably were foreign, since he had like 150 IQ. I know he's the outlier, but
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a good example of someone with really high intelligence who's just it's hard to relate to people because they're just not on the same level as you. And
I
so
just wonder what would happen though, like if he had been born to like maybe a higher kind of a more upper middle class family, say
or
not really from flyover country.
yeah, if he'd been able to be put in a situation where he was around people who were like him, like I don't know if Mensa is legit, but if you have a really smart kid, you got to put him around really smart people, or he's going to slack off and not reach his full potential. He's also not going to socialize very well either.
I'm just saying, like in America, it's like the extreme upper class that lives in the cities, or it's like they're distinct. It's like night and day. between the two populations, and that's kind of the division that we saw in the elections. But going back to what I was talking about with communities, I find the suburban outlays, kind of the suburban design in modern day America to be very alienating, and extremely almost kind of unhuman. It's almost like it
It
develops
is.
itself to be kind of where you are atomized, where it's not, there's not much culture there. It's kind of a plastic existence.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you push, like, I understand the free market is a good tool, but this unbridled global capitalism really pushes people to the extremes of materialism and self-indulgence and decadence. And when that happens, they
Well, do
lose.
you think the suburbs is an outer extension of that, or do you think it's just
Yeah,
kind of,
definitely.
or do you think it's just like kind of white flight? Because there was,
It's a combination of things. But like, once you get out there, you have to, like, these middle class suburbs, they got a nice house, they got a nice car, they got some nice stuff, nice TV, but that doesn't fulfill the soul, if you catch my drift.
yeah, it's
It's they don't they're becoming less religious, so they don't have any fulfillment there. They don't really, outside maybe a couple camping trips or vacations, they don't really get out and do anything. A lot of people who try and emulate the middle class lifestyle end up dead broke or going from paycheck to paycheck. So they're constantly stressed out. Many people are being filled with terrible drugs that are driving them insane and ruining their bodies. We don't exercise as much. We don't eat right. Uh, the only thing that people tell you to get is money nowadays. They don't tell you to foster a community or be there for your children or be there for your neighbor. None of this exists anymore, and it's an offshoot because of the multicultural, multi-ethnic society that we live in.
well, the reason why this was brought to my attention is because like recently I had to deal with someone in kind of the movement I was with that apparently he kind of, it seems like when he was around this circle, he was very friendly with these ideas, ethno-nationalist ideas. But when he got around like normies, when we kicked him out for being erratic and for misbehaving and for like uh, we kicked him out and he went to another circle and automatically he turned on the ethno-nationalist and he sided with kind
Ah,
of the normies
you're
against.
talking about JT.
Yeah, I'm talking. Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we talked about it on the Brexit Party podcast as well.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
actually
Someone brought it up,
so.
and I was like, "Huh, is that JT
So
he's talking about?"
that, yeah. See, that kind of what happened, and that brought me to this whole entire discussion. It brought me home to this whole entire
Mhm.
topic. I was wondering, like why are people so desperate to have friends? Why are people so desperate to kind of switch even their political alliances and
Yep.
their beliefs just to fit into a certain particular circle? And this led me to believe that there's probably something bad with our culture presently to
Oh,
make people
absolutely.
act in such a way. And I've encountered this from more than one time in this particular kind of movement.
Yeah, there's a lot of young men who turn towards the right because they see it as like a symbol of strength, because that's what young men need in their lives. They need a symbol of strength to kind of show them the way until they get out on their own. And this is how it used to be in our cultures. You could look up to your father, who was a strong guy, or your grandfather, who was a strong guy, or you could look to your community where there were lots of strong men leading the way, or you could look even to your government where there was a bunch of strong, intelligent men leading the way, or something like that, or you had a flag to be proud of, or even just a religion to be proud of. And it was all, the strength was held as a virtue, but it's not held like that anymore. So all of a sudden, you get a relatively new movement, such as the alternative right or any group like it, that's promoting strength as a virtue, and men want to drive to it. And this is another reason why in Europe there's such a, I say large, but I mean relative to the size of how many are there, a relatively large number of native European men who are converting to Islam, because it is a symbol of strength. They hold strength as a virtue, even higher than the Western world has recently. And so they're converting to what they see as a winning strategy. So there's young men coming into these nationalist movements who see it as a way of being a part of something that's strong and they can be proud of it. But at the same time, they're not conquering their inner demons. So when it doesn't live up to their expectations, they turn coat and run.
And that's a problem because this movement is not going to be one overnight. There's a lot of struggle involved, and
Yep.
I've noticed that a lot of people also, because potentially you cut them out of their circles, they think you're snubbing them,
Hmm.
and that's not particularly so. You're doing so because they're unhealthy, because you don't want to be driven down. You don't want to be basically burnt out from them.
Yeah,
You
and
don't
it
want them.
takes a lot of will to not get burnt out on this shit because action is not going to happen tomorrow. It's an unfortunate side effect, and I wish I could do more to prevent it. But the tall leaf of grass is the first one to get cut, and there simply is not enough of us behind this movement yet to really do anything. Which is, later on we can talk about it if you want to, but transitioning into real life effectively is some strategy that I'm
Well,
curious
what
about
I
talking
wanted to
about.
know, okay, we can get to that, but what I wanted to really kind of know is how do we avoid these people? Because I think these people can be a detriment, and
Uh,
they can take down your kind of organization if you have them. And it appears that a lot of men nowadays act very feminine. They act very feminine. They kind
mhm.
of backstab. They
They
gossip.
act
They
like women.
talk. Yes, they act like bitches. Yes.
Yep. Well, first you have to not be afraid of criticism. Don't call people out for very like rudimental criticisms of a movement. If someone says something bad and I call that person out on their bad whatever they said, then don't call me out for putting them down because maybe it's something that we need to be aware of. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is you have to be aware that these people exist, like we're talking about right now. You have to be aware that there are people out there who are just looking for identity. They're looking for something. So if you can't provide that to them, they might be dangerous. They might turn coat and run if at all possible. So at the same time, you also need to crush this unending nihilism and put a sense of identity back into people. And that is what I call the primary motive of the alternative political movements right now, is that our primary goal is not to necessarily seize political power yet. But the first thing that we have to do is revive identity in people, in particular Western, or sorry, not Western, European people of the Western world. That's the first step because if we can't do that, then there's not going to be enough people to support us when we do come into power, and we're just going to lose it instantly. And this is, if you just look at what happened in 1920s Germany, this is exactly what happened. People were down on their ass, full of nihilism. They were being crushed, even worse than they were being crushed right now by the Zionist and the
Lots of sexual depravity and vices to keep them
exactly, yeah. I
keep them
know on
their
the
mind numb.
yeah on the whole sexual decadency thing that we're seeing now is worse than it was, but it's only because of mass communication. So, but we're still seeing it. So they were being crushed on all sides. And what happened? They got someone in power who gave them hope, showed them identity, and led them forward. So that it's something to keep in mind.
Oh yeah, I think anyone can kind of can unite all the different classes in United States, and also like care about the working class as well as the middle class, and kind of point out the parasitic elites. And I'm not just talking about a particular people that echo or have bracket Americans.
Bracket
Um,
Americans, I like
I'm
it.
talking about some of the Anglo elite as well. That's not often talked about, that people often kind of skirt around. There are some self hating white people that live around the coastal areas and in New York City and California, etc. There's
Hmm.
some also technical. We also apparently have a new class of people that has arose, that has risen, known as the technocrat bugman.
Yeah.
People like Zuckerberg, Elon Musk,
Yeah.
and these various other people that have, they're in the technological world. And if you pay attention to Silicon Valley, you'll notice they've developed their own kind of religion around
Yeah.
transhumanism and electronics and computers and
Well, this is
artificial
what
intelligence.
Mitchell Heisman talked about in his suicide note that I did an analysis of a couple of weeks ago, where he talked about transhumanism as an extension of this hyper individualist society that we're living in, and that people, in essence, people have lost a sense of identity. They've lost a connection to the spiritual world, things like that, and instead they're trying to find it in technology, and it's going to lead down a path of destruction
Yeah, they've
for human
developed in
beings.
Silicon Valley. They've developed an entire kind of religion based upon it.
Yeah, exactly. If you think outside of their bug mentality, then you're some evil person. You're excommunicated.
I mean, it kind of if you've seen that latest cover, it says the the triumph of the beta male. You know,
Yes, I
there's
saw that. Jesus Christ.
now those are the people that want to be your future elites.
Ha.
many of them are bracket Americans, and many of
I'd like
them
to see
are
them fucking try.
yeah, I know they're definitely gonna get squashed like bugs. But I think their mindset is kind of the same mindset of the guy that's in kind of the robot that you see in the anime.
Mm.
That their mindset is that the pretty much electronics and technology is going to protect them
They
from the
want
proletariats.
yeah, they want the Ghost in the Shell to be a real thing.
Yeah, from the proles, they think they can get a nice fancy kind of exosuit, and and their transhumanism is going to pretty much make them invincible and make them immortal.
Well, that's the thing about this egalitarian movement is it's only pushed by the weakest people. Only the weak push for egalitarianism because they know they're going to get, swept up by the broom of stronger men. So they want this, democracy and social welfare and things like this. A social welfare without having to do anything about it. They want to equalize the sexual market as well, so they can actually compete with men who are better than themselves. It's this whole leftist ideology which is cancerous upon people.
Now, here's a question though: how many people truly are capable of introspection? I mean, this what you're saying requires a certain amount of average intelligence, and it requires a certain amount of introspection that people I don't know have the integrity anymore to do so. Even in people in our movement, to be quite honest with you.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why I even started talking about this is because I think it for the people who don't do it naturally, like people like me, I do it naturally. Every time I do something, I think about my
Because you have a
actions.
lot of people with Dunning-Krugers and a lot of people that think they're
Exactly, and
more impressive than what they are.
what I think needs to happen is they need someone to inspire them and sort of tell them, someone they look up to that needs to sit them down and say, "Hey, you're a goddamn asshole and you need to fix some shit because it ain't working and you're going to drag us all down into hell with you." So that was kind of my role. I'm not trying to be an e-celeb or anything like that, but somebody needs to get out there and tell these young men that there's something
You mean you're
greater out
not
there.
trying to be e-celeb? You don't want the e-shekels and
No,
the
I don't.
notoriety?
I'll say it now. I don't want anybody's money. I'm not gonna. If you see an ad on one of my videos, it's because YouTube copyright claims something and the owner put a video on it. I don't
Okay.
monetize anything on here.
So what's wrong with e-celebrity? What's wrong with that?
I don't. I like my job. Thanks. I
Okay,
actually like being productive. Like this
I
is just
see.
a fucking hobby. But
You don't want to chill out in like California somewhere and just do like political videos all day and walk around and
oh,
do like
no,
maybe
I want
do
to
rap
actually.
videos.
The only way I would ever consider doing that is if I was the head of a real life political
Would you
activist
do an
movement.
alt right rap video? I mean, would you? Do you believe in Uyghur nationalism?
Now, if I actually was like a part of a real political movement that had some real clout, I might consider living off of the funds from that
I
because then I
see.
could turn it into a real life job where I'm every single day I'm out there, I'm networking, I'm protesting, I'm active, I'm being an activist, but this I mean it only requires a couple hours of work every week to do what I do. It's not
I
something
think
that
some people should. I think some people, even like Sam Hyde, if he comes back, you should make fun of e-celebs. Because honestly, I think that's the only thing we can make fun of kind of on the side now, in my opinion.
well, I mean, I poke fun at e-celebs. I have nothing against them. They're perfectly
I
valid
mean, I have
tools.
nothing against them either. It's just some people
Well,
inflate
see,
their importance.
like Gashista says in the chat, people like Lauren Southern. I mean, I don't have anything against her. I just wish these young beta males would stop giving her so much goddamn money.
That's another thing. Like that's a whole another thorny subject that you're probably going to have to discuss the whole WQ. That's gonna come up there. And
Well,
that's gonna.
that's another thing I wanted to talk about is teach young men to have self respect. She don't give money to women who are not giving anything to you. Okay, I understand she's putting out good content. She's working really hard, but on the internet, there's no really way to judge that. You know, it's very hard because she could have 10 guys behind her that
Cough,
are
cough,
doing it.
rumming millennial.
Yeah, exactly. Even people like him, like I don't know what he's doing behind the scenes. I don't know if he's actually involved in this movement. He's an internet personality.
No,
I
no,
don't
it's a
know.
woman. You don't know who.
Oh,
The
roaming millennial. Sorry. Yeah, I
yes,
don't know what she's doing behind the scenes. Yeah, I followed her, but like,
she's asking people for. Anyway, I don't want to get lost on like this whole.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want
My
to get
my
lost on
my
this.
my
We're
point
getting
is
lost
like
in the weeds here.
women either women are supposed to be taken care of by their mate, by their man. You don't have to support them. I don't give women to I don't give money to women who aren't providing something for me, like having my children or cleaning my house or cooking me food. I don't give money to women that are not doing those kind of things. So just all y'all out there, stop giving your money to these people. They don't need it. You're
How
wasting
about
your
you?
money.
How about you use that money for self improvement? Buy yourself a weight set or a gym
Exactly.
membership, so you can actually attract a real woman and not an e-celeb that doesn't care about you.
Yeah, Zeeth. Yeah, I don't have anything against them. I would never tell them to not make this content. But what I'm saying is there are people who form a cult of personality around them to sort of it drags us down because then it becomes a feud between who do you like
Well, if you ever
best.
criticize them, then you have about a ton of men that are on your back, and you have legitimate
Exactly.
criticism, and they're just sitting there unscathed, and then they're still going to continue to do what they're doing.
Oh yeah, Zeeth. I was just saying, like I know the whole lefty pole tactic to get us to discredit these people who are talking. I just don't want it to turn into a cult of personality. That's my only criticism.
Oh, lefty pole. What about lefty pole?
They're running ops on 4chan to discredit many of the talking heads of the alt right, like JF and Spencer and the Kumite and things like that. They're
No, I
saying,
enjoy
oh
that stuff. I That has a lot of entertainment value, and it gets our message out there to a wider audience.
yeah, that was my
Simply
point.
I'm simply talking about e-celebs just to be e-celebs that are kind of not legitimate and not vested.
Yeah, yeah. People who like as soon as they get a little bit of fame, they instantly like monetize their shit and try and put it behind a paywall. It's like,
I
come on,
got you.
man.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. I was just talking about this whole, but I guess this kind of falls, like I said, this kind of falls in this whole desolation, and there's really
Mhm.
no community building that's going on.
Yeah, there really isn't, and that's
And
one of my
I'm
goals as
curious
well.
if that ever is going to happen. Let's suppose they don't. Let's suppose they don't give us the ethno state, and there's not going to be any leader that's going to save us. What exactly should people do on an individual level to try to like build this community?
To build the community, man, that's something hard to say because there really isn't a. I mean, there really isn't a community to talk about. It's not really a unified movement. There's no charismatic leader leading the charge because we have so many
What if
questions
there
about
is none though? Like, what if the charismatic leader will never exist, and it's just what we have presently? Because to be quite honest with you, I don't ever see, and I don't want to black pill anybody, but I don't ever see like the wider. I don't see the wider population of white people ever embracing ethno nationalism, save for the present people we have now, unless things get very, very, very drastic.
Well, this is why I want to go. I want to take some of these things into real life. Not soon per se, because I
I
have
mean,
some
even
things.
if we make this normie friendly, even if we
Oh,
take
it's not about that.
away.
It's about actually going out there and meeting other people within this community in real life. Setting up me like as much as I rag on Sargon of Akkad, he actually met up with some people for a political uh, rally, I guess you could call it, like a political meetup in real life where they were talking face to face. Props to him for doing that. As cringy as it was, and as awkward as he acts in public, props to him for actually getting out there and mobilizing people. So I want to do something like that because a lot of this you can say a lot of shit on the internet and make YouTube videos, but it's not really effective unless you can look at someone's face in real life and really feel the emotion and tension in the room. And that's what I want to do. And I want to take people on activities or be a part of something. Like what's it called, Nordfront in Europe.
Yes, like
They
Nordfront.
actually they
Yes,
do community building where they go around the community and they pick up trash and they plant trees and they're marching in the streets.
that's what I mean. I mean, kind of like doing kind of charity outreach, kind of like the Golden Dawn or
Exactly. And I
these
used
particular
to
groups do.
and I used to be I was a Cub Scout and then I was a Boy Scout all my life. And the community outreach that we did was so powerful for the messages that we were trying to spread at the time. And it's like, I want to take that kind of approach where, because you're not going to reach people if you're doing the Charlottesville thing where you're scaring them, because they have a lizard brain reaction to this new political movement and they're going to shut you out. So you need to be a little bit, I don't want to say nicer because that's some cuck tier shit, but
No, don't say that. That is cuck tier.
you need to be a little bit more welcome, and a little bit more approachable. You can't bare your fangs at someone and then ask, why they're running away from you. So some community outreach would be a great way to improve the image of whatever movement you're trying to do.
Because I just see that disconnect, and there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of young people out there, particularly males, that are detached from society and don't feel like society really. They don't have much vested in society. They don't really care much about. I guess they've slipped into that, nihilistic tide.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that
just real quick, Zeeth. Yeah, I know there are lots of dumb Americans, but you have to remember they're mostly in the cities. The rural Americans that I know are very good at the things that we're talking about.
That's true. That's true. I will give you that. But even I live in a rural area presently, and I can say that I can see kind of the the eventual creep of the rot of the city, distilling from television and media. I can kind of see it's coming in. I can kind of see feminism creep in. I can see a lot of the residuals of that I experienced, when I was living in the larger cities. I can see the eventual creep, and it's creeping into areas you wouldn't expect, in very rural areas. So there's not one place in America where the rot has not penetrated.
Yeah, it is everywhere, but I'd like to give some credit to people in America. They're not as dumb as you think.
I never said that.
No, I'm talking to the guys in the chat. It's only as dumb as the media portrays them, and they want those dumb people to get out there and protest.
The whole. I guess that we're going to go into. I don't want to slide back into the optics stuff because that's a never ending.
Yeah,
that's a never ending. It's a never ending battle. Some people say khakis and slacks, and some people will say no, just go out there full fash and. It's just a perpetual cycle. It never ends. Mainly, what I wanted to talk about was alienation and kind of desolation that comes with.
Do you want to talk about Bowling Alone a little bit more about the specifics?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's talk about Bowling Alone.
Do your spiel, man.
Well, what exactly do you want to know about the book? Other than it's kind of self-explanatory what it covers. I don't know. I don't have the exact numbers of the study that was in the books or the sample size or any of that. I just know that they conducted the study somewhere in San Francisco and in a very diverse community. And they discovered, like I said, that people became more insular instead of embracing, instead of becoming more, outward. They found people just retracted themselves from their community.
So I haven't read the book. I should probably pick it up. But is it just a study? It's not like a commentary or anything.
There's some commentary in there. It's kind of like it. Just a lot of it distills down to the guy's disappointment that he wanted, and he kept the secret. Like I think secret for like a couple, 10 to 15 years before he ever released it.
Yeah, I think it was back in like 2002 or something like that.
Yeah, it was somewhere. No, it was actually earlier than that. I think it was somewhere in the 90s where he did the study, where he conducted the study. Okay. It's been around for a while. The book's been around for a while.
Yeah, Nick Fuentes mentioned it last night in his debate on
civic nationalism. I don't think anybody has ever done another study like that. Like nobody examines these issues in academia. They're too busy wondering about feminist critique of transgender dysphoria, stuff like that. They're concerned with, stuff like that, really, really obscure, kind of weird subjects in academia now.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily around, minority groups. They're not concerned about the majority. For all they're concerned, kind of flyover people, rural people, can basically just go fuck themselves.
Yeah. Just talking to some guys in the chat. Someone wants me to talk about Varg and his criticism of the alt-right. I can do that if y'all want.
I want
Uh,
to I want to comment on that real quick about Varg. This is going to sound really weird and strange, but I think Varg has a lot of good points about becoming connected to the land and actually going and homesteading. That's kind of been my project. I think a lot of white people should probably, if they're not going to give you the ethno state, some whites should consider kind of forming kind of a co-op or a collective and not becoming a compound, not becoming a
yeah,
weird kind of compound or Ruby
yeah,
Ridge or anything like that, but kind of going out and buying some land and some acreage and start, homesteading. If they're not going to give you the ethno state, because I think homesteading would be a lot more conducive and healthy to the white kind of psyche than just suburban sprawl.
yeah. Varg makes some great points, and I have his role playing game, and it's a lot of fun. But as far as I'm concerned, like he makes some good points, but the sort of primitivist position I think doesn't really work for me because I'm very heavily invested in science and technology. It's one of my favorite things in
Well, I
life,
mean,
and I
can there be a synthesis though of like the land, the soil and and also like
oh,
technology at the same time
absolutely.
without being a bug man?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at white countries, they're some of the most technologically advanced, but they're also the cleanest. You know, if you look at our countries
Yeah, by the
compared
way,
to
that's not only the domain of those extreme leftists, environmentalism, that's another thing we might want to get back. We might want to go eco-fash,
that's
you know?
yeah, that's one thing that I really care about is taking care of nature. As someone who venerates nature quite heavily, there is a balance that you can strike between productivity and nature.
So I'd like to see those integrated, kind of some of those concepts kind of
Yeah,
integrated into the alt right, into white nationalism, or whatever you want to call it, ethno nationalism, whatever you want to call it. I'd like to see more varied topics. I mean,
yeah,
that's kind of
and so Varg has a good message, but I think he takes it to the extreme, and it's not for everybody. It's certainly not for me, and I don't know if he just doesn't understand some of the things that we're capable of, like where the future is headed. It's a whole scientific argument I didn't want to get into, but take
that's
take what
fine. I mean,
he's
you can if you want. I mean, you can if you want, because that's kind of I kind of sympathize with Varg, and I kind of see that that's
oh,
kind of the
absolutely.
direction we're going.
The
I'm
things
not
that
so I'm not so optimistic about the future. To be quite honest with you, I am
well,
sort of especially for America. I don't see the racial problems. I see them actually escalating and getting worse because of the lack of the neglect of the people in academia and kind of people in the cathedral, as you could call them, not really addressing these issues, or
mhm.
everyday people kind of like, you know, submerging themselves and kind of hiding from the issues instead of actually confronting them. I actually see a balkanization occurring.
Yeah, and that's what I've always said is that there is a breakup coming in the United States. The empire will fall, and I think we're going to have to move towards ethnic nationalism when it does fall. You know, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to come and go. And anyone who thinks that we can somehow retake America as a whole, like the federal government, is just it's not going to work. There's going to be the same exact problems that we had beforehand. So I think a
The
balkanization.
question is though, can we take back those demographic pockets that we're going to eventually lose because of demographic decline of white people, and particularly in the South and other parts in the Northeast and places like California. And is this going to like trickle in to other areas? Is there going to be any kind of halt to this?
I think if we do break off parts of the United States into ethnic nationalist societies and we put up strong border walls, it will stop completely. And we're going to get a flood of refugees, of leftists who are now stuck with the bed that
Well,
they've
that's
made
fine with me. I
essentially.
don't really. I'll be quite honest, quite frank with you. I don't care about the leftists in the cities.
Well, I mean,
I don't really care about them.
they're still kin. You know what I mean? So I feel bad for them.
Okay.
And if they're willing to actually make a change, I know I
How many
that's
of them are actually wanting to make a change though?
oh,
Because
believe me, when
the
Tyrone breaks
dopamine
into their
hits
house and rapes them, they're going to want to make a change, and they're going
are,
to
but will they just may not make excuses because they're in their social circle they can get that dopamine hit from saying, well, I may have been raped by the by Tyrone down the street, but I had this wonderful black friend, that's a doctor or whatever, or this token kind of Hispanic friend that's not like
Mhm.
the norm, that's an outlier. Because I've seen
Yeah,
a lot
I'm
of
I'm not
exceptional tokenism within these like really kind of liberal circles.
Well, hold on. Let me clarify. Zeeth, I'm not talking about race traders. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people um, who legitimately people who might be apolitical and are not down with the whole ethno-state thing, so they stay where they are. And eventually they're going to see the collapse coming, and they're going to want to seek refuge, and we should consider it because of course it's another way to bolster our numbers.
I'd like to hear a counterpoint to this, like this whole collapse thing, this apocalypse kind of this apocalypse porn. I've kind of like
It's very
I
black
have
pill. It's
I
very
mean, it's black
nihilistic.
pill. I'd like to hear a counterpoint that actually explains why this is not relevant. You know, because you even having people like Thomas Chittum that was writing about this in 1995, who wrote the book Civil War II. He was a former Vietnam veteran and war strategist.
Hmm.
You might know him from his book, The Fourth Generational Warfare. And he wrote about this. He wrote about this event, kind of a people forming into, you know, ethnic militia, contingents of ethnic militias,
Yep.
and kind of like going at each other like in the Balkans, literally independent kind of warfare. Not like the Civil War where you had organized warfare, but it's all unorganized bands of people.
Well, the way
Now,
that Varg looks at it, and um, I've been asked what do I think the collapse will be. I don't think it'll be a Vargian collapse for the entire thing where like all of our industries falter and we go back to primitivism. I don't think that's very likely. What I think is likely is people are going to be fighting over resources. There's going to be an ethnic balkanization in most parts in the world. Europe is in a much more dire strait than we are here in America. So there is
we
going
have
to
more
be.
space. We have more we have more space to expand. You know, that's
Mhm.
really why we're in a better position. We have more geographical and logistical space to like separate races of people that want to be separate.
Yeah. So my whole point is that I want to try and avoid this extreme like Yugoslavia tier balkanization because the only thing that's going to happen there is that good people are going to die, and I don't want to see that happen. So if we can achieve this without firing a shot, that's probably the best outcome as far as I'm concerned. Just on a practical level, like our numbers are already low. I don't want to waste any people in a pointless conflict. So if we
And
can
it's kind
try
of
and do.
sad because their cosmopolitan elite are going to just laugh at the people at the
Yeah.
bottom, kind of like just kind of like just clawing each other. You know, they're going to laugh at them. They're gonna like scoff at them and say, "Oh well, you know, we knew they would do it, and well, they've fulfilled our. We don't really care, so we're going to be off to our next destination, so we can go exploit that place, or try to blend in, or try to marry into whatever. Maybe Asia, maybe other parts of Eastern Europe.
Hmm.
They might displace themselves to. I mean, who knows who these oligarchs will go?
Yeah, it's I don't I don't think that the all in all, I don't think of the I don't think the Vargian collapse is is going to happen. I don't think it's an inevitability like you would like it is. It's a possibility. I'm not going to deny that, but I
Or
don't know.
we can do a Spanglerian kind of a whimper. You know, we can go out with a whimper instead of a bang.
Well, I'll tell you this: if it gets down to the point where it's like South Africa tier, then yeah, we're gonna.
Or it could be Brazil. You know, there's eventual kind of just mixing and all kinds of mystery meats is formed, and different casts are de facto kind of
I,
casts are formed from that mystery meat.
yeah, let's avoid the mystery meat future of America. Let's try and do that. But
I mean, those are the possible scenarios, and whether people like it or
yeah,
not,
and
I do see that happening in the South. So
it's all
I don't
completely.
think Dixie can be saved, guys. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I when I walk into a Walmart and I go into a Walmart and I see this mystery meat walking around and I see various different white women with a mulatto kid in tow, I'm sorry, but Dixie might be gone.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing, right? I'm willing to sacrifice to preserve my heritage, right? So if that means working in turn with some black ethno nationalists and giving them a state in the South, I'm all for it because the selfishness in turn promotes my survival. I'm willing to do it if that's our last option. Believe me. And I don't want any of this to happen. I don't want the United States to
What
balkanize.
about La Raza though? What about La Raza? That has like
Um,
a literal they have a literal plan to take the entire Southwest, and they not only stop at the Southwest, they include the Northwest and Canada as
Yep.
part of the former Aslan.
And they're going to be met with AR-15s behind every blade of grass in the goddamn country if they try that shit. And we're going to put them down like wet dogs.
I like that talk.
I mean, that's just reality because that's a legitimate threat. You know how many people are south of the American border? If they try that shit, they're going to be met with as much resistance as possible.
Well, their plan is eventual kind of slow creep. It's not
Well,
necessarily.
that's
It's
why
moving number. It's moving demographics. It's shifting logistics.
that's
From
why ethnic nationalism is so important. Why the ethno state is so important, and the changing of our government. Like, I'm into the whole Americana thing, but our government hasn't been able to protect us from this, and it's only an inevitability if we maintain the system.
That's true. That's
So,
true.
as far as I'm concerned, if we want to prevent all of this shit from happening, we need to reconstitute among ethnic lines, put up a strong border wall, revive our culture, and teach our young men and women how to actually behave, put some morality back in them. Give them a boot in the
Maybe
ass.
provide some incentive to the anti-white black element to return to their motherland. Or like some felons from jail to return, pay them money to actually relocate.
Well, that's one of the strategies of ethnic nationalism is like, hey, if we've got people in the ethno state who we don't want, yeah, we're going to pay them, and then we're going to make them social outcasts.
Maybe pay them not to have children. I mean, that's another method that I've heard floated around.
Yeah, and they're so dumb they'll actually take the money.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They have such low time preference. They will.
But anyway, so there's an infinite number of possible scenarios. There's no way for us to predict the future. The one thing that we need to do is we need to have a strategy that can kind of deal with all of this. And I think that ethnic nationalism of some kind, regardless of what the actual politics are, some kind of nation state based on the idea of in-group is absolutely necessary to protect us.
Well, the $1 million question is like, can you go beyond just whiteness? Because it's going to take more than whiteness just to unify, the collective European American population present.
Oh, sure.
Present.
Yeah,
It's not just mo white skin that's going to get it.
Yeah. That's why this is not just a genetic movement. This is a socio-cultural movement. It's why I'm not so anti-Christianity, because there are a lot more Christians than there are non-Christian whites. So you're going to have to get them on board too, and they're going to be an absolutely essential ally. That, and I don't put religion before my kin. So.
No, that's a noble virtue.
Yeah, because it's I look back at I have an ancestor who fought for the Holy Roman Empire during the 30 Years' War.
Wow, you actually trace back your ancestry that far.
It goes back to the 9th century, but
oh, nice.
I read, there was a book that was written about him, a very short story, and I read about that and I see that absolute hell he had to go through and what the church was capable of doing, bringing these people who were essentially the same outside of language and culture, and they got them to slaughter each other in the most brutal possible ways for 30 years. And to think that religion is capable of doing that. I'm not an anti-theist by any means, but I do not want that to happen. No more brothers' wars, no more brother blood spilled. If you catch my drift.
I know, I understand. Going back to I think we've touched on the Desolation. Do you think there's anything more to cover there? Because I think we've covered that pretty much.
Yep. If there's anyone in the chat who wants to pose a question, do it now. If you want to come on the show, you can find me in Discord. The link's in the description. But let's see. Let me scroll through the chat here. Let's see what we got going on here. Keith, my ancestor was a Scots-Irish count. He was kind of a dick. Yeah, I've got some people like that. You know, it's funny. I look at my father's side and my mother's side, and they were constantly at war with each other for like 1,000 years before it ended up making me. Kind of funny. Let's see here. What shall we do with the traitorous whites? Interesting question.
Day of the rope.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on what the severity of their crime is. Like I said, we're going to need, lots of allies.
Lots of rope and helicopters.
Yeah, anyone who is a diehard communist and is not going to change, yeah, helicopter rides. But There are some people who are just like apolitical.
I think a lot of the traitorous whites will select themselves out when the non-whites they live around, because most of them live in the cities, surrounded by large enclaves of ghettos and barrios.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those people will probably sort those people out before we even get to them.
Yeah,
Now the question is, like, what are we going to do with these like globo homo capitalists, that are spreading their paws and their anti-whiteness everywhere they can? Those are the people like I'm really concerned about, and
yeah.
these are the people ruining our societies.
Yeah, the subversives and the undesirables have no place in our society. So obviously we're going to exclude those, but there are some decent family people out there who they're just lost and they need a helping hand. They're going to need some guiding light. And hopefully if their backs get put up against the wall, they'll see the light, and then we should accept them, in my opinion.
No, you seem to be very understanding. I'm not quite as much.
Well, it's just a realistic strategy, because you have to realize how small our population
No,
numbers are.
I understand.
Yeah.
But that might be actually part of it, though. I mean, don't you think some of the maybe the people that are around today maybe need some culling, maybe we need some eugenics,
Oh yeah, I mean,
we need
absolutely.
some genetic pruning.
Yeah, no doubt about that. But this sort of there are ways to do that without like diminishing your collective power. That's my only concern really in all of this, is diminishing collective power to the point where we kind of neuter ourselves. The whole like ally question is very important, because you have to consider that we're not exactly the strongest force in the world yet.
That's true.
There's no dishonor in asking for help.
That's why previously I was suggesting kind of a secret society type organization, which I guess is kind of larpy,
Exactly.
but I'm
Well,
still going with it, because I still think it would work if people could effectively pull it off. If you could form kind of a collective that kept our intentions kind of to themselves and usurped power where they could, and had a network of pro-white people, I think we could maximize our chances of moving covertly and kind of at the same time moving with our own interest.
yeah, there's going to be a culling, but it's not going to be the kind that most people think about. It's going to be more of a natural eugenics, like an evolutionary one.
Well,
And I think,
nature is a fascist.
yeah, exactly. So it's going to be super important. And it is a part of the right wing ideology that we all ascribe to here. So, uh,
Also, if like there's any like non-whites watching this, which I don't know if they are, I'm
I saw
open to talk. I'm
I
open
saw
to
some
talk.
Italians in the chat, so there you
Well,
go.
the Italians, the Dacos and the spaghetti niggers count.
Yeah.
So if there's like any non-whites in here, I openly talk to black nationalists, to any kind of ethno nationalists from other races. I openly talk to them, regardless of how anti-white they might be. Surprisingly, I will still talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, because regardless of how we feel, they still, as far as I'm concerned, have the moral authority to rule themselves. It's just a matter of where and how.
And I'm not
As
like a
long as
white
they're not,
liberal. I don't. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as long as they're the hell away from me and we've got a strong border, I'm not particularly concerned with
Yeah,
some
I
people.
don't. I don't care if like blacks hate whites.
Yeah.
Per se, as long as they don't have any power to execute that wish upon the white population. I mean, you can hate whites all you want to. Just do it from afar, please. Don't be a hypocrite, and
See,
enjoy the fruits of Western civilization while hating whitey.
exactly. Zeeth says we don't hate non-whites; we only hate anti-whites, and
Oh
that's
no,
very
I
true.
don't hate non-whites. Not at all. But I do. Like I said, I do believe we should separate. That's always been my message. Never hate.
Absolutely, it's not about hate; it's about love for your people. That's what nationalism is.
I mean, you might hear me saying some choice words for some particular ethnic groups, but it doesn't mean I hate them. I just like a good racial humor.
Well, the thing is, like, if you look at the differences between left and right, it's like the right doesn't hate them for what's the word?
No, but we'll
It's
just incorporate you in a meme and make fun of you. And
they,
that's cool with me.
they don't
I
really
mean,
right
you're
wingers don't
welcome.
really.
You're welcome to also incorporate white people in the memes and call them cave beast and melanin deficient, pineal gland. Not
Well,
pineal.
I was going to say that the left hates us for what we are. We only hate people for who they are and their actions.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think someone asked me. GlacoonCon asked me what will be the causes of the collapse. Well, it's a multifaceted issue, but what the media is doing is that they're really tying up this whole divide and conquer thing, which is It's very obvious. They're trying to do class warfare. They're trying to do the whole Marxist strategy. They're dividing us on gender. They're dividing us on race.
You know, the
That's
irony of that is the irony of the whole class warfare is most of the people that are doing this class warfare are rich themselves. It's not
yeah,
actually the proletariats that are rising up against the moneyed class. It's mostly academics. It's mostly ivory tower academics that are constructing these false worlds in their mind, and they're getting their cohabitors, such as bugmen and cat ladies, who just do it to virtue signal and get more status.
that's
So
the great irony
it's a
of
virtue
Marxism.
status loop.
Yeah, the great irony of Marxism is that it was never the proletariat that came up with these ideas. It
No,
was never the proletariat that enacted these ideas. I mean, if you look at the Marx himself was a rich aristocrat, essentially.
well,
I
they
mean, he was a
found that the
parasite, but
proletariats were always kind of nationalistic. They never could understand that. So Gramsci actually took it one step further
Mhm.
and said, "Well, let's not do economics, let's do culture," and that was the early birth of the Frankfurt School. You know,
Yeah, so
are
yeah,
you
so
familiar with Gramsci?
yeah, I'm familiar with the whole
Okay,
cultural Marxist thing, but yeah, they use
the whole prison notebooks thing.
yeah, they use these divide and conquer strategies to weaken America so that the Soviets could take over. They didn't take into account that their economic system was absolute dog shit and it ended up
You know,
collapsing their entire
I
empire.
don't know so much that it's really a divide and conquer along class lines per se. I think it's more just a snobbery thing that they think that because they're upper class, they can flex and show how enlightened they are and get a dopamine hit after, having that token black friend or taking that photo op with that Harlem kid in the ghetto. I think
Yeah.
that's more of a thing than class warfare is now. I think multiculturalism is just it's just basically the upper elites kind of getting drunk off their own ideas, and it's kind of diffused down, unfortunately, to like the middle class and the other class because they want to replicate, I suppose, what they see in the media, or they see these people, they say, well, if I replicate these people, I'm going to get their status as well.
There's lots of people out there lots of younger generation people who are disenfranchised. Well, they see themselves disenfranchised from the upper classes. They see, oh, these
Well, they
rich
are actually. They
billionaires.
are. There is the divide in America between urban, the urbanized kind of elite, I would call them, is very
Mhm.
pronounced. It is very pronounced in New York City and Manhattan are night and day compared to some cul-de-sac and Missouri somewhere.
Interest and here was taking the black pill, and I wouldn't disagree. I think the United States is on its way to dividing amongst itself. I mean,
Don't read Siege. Read Civil War II by Thomas Chittum.
just just briefly glance at Siege. Don't read it. Just glance at it. No, it's but I mean, there are ways of getting rich nowadays. You just have to be a scumbag about it, and most people aren't intelligent enough to reach that. It's not an impossibility like it used to be. It's not like feudalism, but anyway, so they have it in their heads that they're disenfranchised, right? So they see this whole class of people as being evil. If you talk to the average millennial about what they think about millionaires and billionaires, they think that
Which
they're evil.
millennial though? Which millennial are you talking about? Are you talking about like the average flyover millennial, or are you talking about? And I'm sorry, I hate to divide people, but that's kind of how it plays out. It's a lot of it's just urbanite versus rural dichotomy. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I think you ask like a millennial out there in the country somewhere. I mean, I don't think he sees like these people as necessarily an evil entity. You know,
I've seen
um,
both. I've spoken
really.
to both. Yeah, in real life, I've spoken both. It kind of depends on where you are, but it's definitely an across the board thing for the younger generation because they're so well connected to the internet. They don't really hold the same cultural values as the rural versus urban divide. It's much more of a millennial
So you
internet
think
culture.
that it's like that internet is kind of standardized that view?
Yeah, I mean, I look at my extended family who live in a rural area, and they're they're on YouTube, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they follow the same memes, they're on Reddit, they're on 4chan. They're the same. Essentially, like I can have a conversation to them about tech that you wouldn't be able to have to a rural person 10 years
I see.
ago.
I see.
So there is a cultural divide. Well, there isn't a cultural divide anymore amongst the younger generations because they're so well connected to the internet. It used to be not the case because rural internet was really bad and hard to get, but now it's the same pretty much everywhere. I
So
mean,
do you think this has made like kind of people more disconnected, even more so than connected. It's kind of made the a sterile landscape.
In an ironic way, yeah, absolutely. Let's see.
Kind of what Uncle Ted was talking about in technological, and technological.
The
I
future of
forget the name of
industrial
his book.
societies, yeah.
Yeah, industrial. Yeah, there you go.
Yep. Interesting here, yeah. The collapse of empires. It's the same pattern over and over again, which is why we're trying to turn the tide and be prepared for the future when the empire does collapse.
I think we've had our heyday. And
yeah, and there's a new.
I'm not convinced there's going to be a renaissance, but I mean, I'd like to see somebody convince me wrong that we're not in a Spengalian kind of decline. I'd like to see someone address this and say, hey, no, you have nothing to worry about.
Let me answer Glockoon's question here and talk about the causes more. If it's very comparable to the Roman decline, where essentially the social decay bred in circuses, class and ethnic and cultural divide, religious divide, it's all there. The signs are all there. And if anyone's curious, I know I'm recommending Stefan Molyneux, but he did a great presentation on the collapse of Rome and the modern parallels to America. Go check out that video. But yeah, it's all there. I mean, people are so focused on pop culture and the material possessions that they have. There's no community. There's very little religion that's taken seriously anymore. There's very little connection to the people around you. I mean, these things all cause a disconnect in people's heads, and eventually it's going to come to a head because you also have people who are extremely unintelligent and extremely violent, and they just want to lash out. So they're going to lash out at people, and that's going to cause a civil war. Well, I mean,
do you think this will be a chimp out that potentially leads to the Civil War?
Yeah, I mean, I live in an area where that's very highly likely.
Can't wait till the summer.
Yeah, this summer is going to be violent. I'll tell you that now.
You think so? Are you making that prediction?
Oh, I know so. It's just a historical. Like, how many times does it take before a coincidence becomes a pattern?
Is that human biodiversity at work? And I got a way we can make money, guys. We can actually take bets on human biodiversity. We can incorporate that and actually look at the way the market moves and just start taking bets on human biodiversity and how it's just going to screw up companies, how it's going to screw up our society. So whenever you see them hiring like lots of minorities, you know that that company's on the decline.
Or, yeah, exactly.
Or if you see them hiring, they have like gender quotas or whatever.
In case there's any
gonna have collapse bridge.
Zeeth asking me if I live in a diverse area. Yeah, I live as a white minority right now, so that should tell you everything. But if anyone isn't woke on the whole diversity thing, go on 4chan and follow the Chicago PD scanner threads. That'll tell you everything you need to know. Or go on YouTube and look up driving through the Detroit hood at night video.
Because they're Democrats. It's because they're Democrats. It's because of the Democratic policies.
Oh, hey, it's only the Democrats, guys.
It's never mind that Seattle and Portland are very kind of white and still leftist and Democrat, and it still doesn't have quite the problems that Chicago or Detroit has, or any these other Rust Belt cities.
They're too stoned to actually shoot each other, so. Yeah. Most of those hipsters don't even know what a gun is, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zeeth, I'm trying, but it's very hard because of my work. So if I want to keep doing my job, I got to stay in the city. It's unfortunate, but
is he encouraging you like to move more to the to a rural area?
Yeah,
I moved to a rural area, and I kind of say I like it a lot better than the
I would too
area I was living in.
Believe me, I would too.
I'm eventually going to try to get homestead and kind of check out of civilization.
I would love to like buy some land out in Texas or somewhere. Yeah, I mean, I would love to do that, but it's just not feasible for everybody. The land is too expensive.
I understand.
The setup costs are too high. It's not for everybody. All right, any more questions out there in the chat? Any more questions? Throw them in now. Speak your piece or hold your silence. Let me check the Discord real quick. Wouldn't you think that our pacifying and nullifying wealth and technology would prevent societal tensions to get too high? No, because people, the bug mentality is they want to hold on to their precious little items as much as possible, their toys, their technology, and trying to take that away from them is going to cause them to spurg out. Enjoy these black pill streams.
Well, here's another thing. Like people, the higher they go up on the economic bracket, the more exclusivity they want. The more they want to distinguish themselves from kind of the people in the middle and the bottom. They want to kind of distinguish, so they buy all these specialty items.
Yeah, they want their Marvel comics, and they want their superhero movies, and they want their Nintendo Switches and all this shit. And if you try,
well, the big thing now, actually, in Silicon Valley is birds. They're buying specialized birds that are that basically another exclusive item.
Interest and hero. Yeah, this isn't a black pill stream. This is it was a white pill stream. We were just talking.
It was supposed to be a white pill stream, and we moved into the collapse and started talking about that. I'm sorry. That's kind of my
iron pill. That's what it is. It's
iron pill. There you go.
Yep. Pick up something heavy and throw it back down. You'll get angry, and that leads to action. Anger leads to action. Augustus, who do I sound like? I sound like someone you know, apparently.
You do have a generic voice.
Yeah, I'm an Amerimut generic voice. See, this is the other thing. This is why I don't use my real name on YouTube, because I'm just a normal dude. It's not interesting. But the moniker that I've taken up is interesting. It makes people think about it. It's like you can be Tom, Dick, or Harry online.
You're just be honest. You're a 400-pound man in the basement somewhere.
Yes, I'm currently sleeping with my waifu pillow right now.
Yeah,
you caught me. No, but it's like it's a mimetic strategy. Like if you've been on the internet as long as I have, you understand that you need to implant a mind virus in people to get your message out there, and that's what I did. But Augustus also asks, "Do I play any video games?" Yes, I do play the occasional strategy game.
These are great questions. Anything else? Yeah. Maybe more. I'm disappointed. I expected better questions.
They're coming in. They're coming in. I am a fan of like tactical shooter games, but only because they're tactical, not because they're shooters. Let's see. Do you think the British shouldn't have broken up their empire? Hard to say. I'm not an imperialist. I think it would have been better had they not gone out and colonized these people, because we wouldn't have the same problems we have today. But Western countries like Canada and Australia, yeah, I think the Queen should disband their parliaments and soak them back up into the new British Empire. I think
my counter argument to that. What about the resources?
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, there's a kind of give and take, but looking back on it as like
do you think the colonial model they could use, where they could have not really have educated the populace or brought them any kind of there could have been no technological kind of exchange between the two cultures. It kind of just could have left them.
Just between you and me, if they'd taken the Muslim strategy, we wouldn't be in this place.
That's what I mean. Or the present Chinese strategy in Africa presently.
Yeah, if they had done something like that, which we're too empathetic and intelligent to do, if we had done that, then yeah, there wouldn't be any problems. But it's just not feasible.
Like I'm saying, what would a savage have known about going and getting a Western education? Because most of them become Marxists anyway. Like if you've noticed, most of those Africans, they have a kind of a disjointed understanding of Marxism, and it becomes kind of a wannabe kind of a strongman government anyway.
A subjective opinion says, "I thought you were a magical severed head talking from beyond the grave." Yes, I am. I am actually a 6 million year old deity from Yggdrasil. I'm currently live streaming from the roots of Yggdrasil right now, so keep it on the down low. I don't want anybody to know. And Augustus asked, "Do you like George Lincoln Rockwell?" I mean, yeah, of course I have to. He was a very inspirational figure. I don't think as far as I'm aware, he got killed before his time, and he never really got the movement anywhere.
And by the way, George Lincoln Rockwell ties into our subject because he liked taking in kind of stray people that were marginalized and were bitter and unhappy, and that was his undoing. That kind of desperate people. The guy who shot him, Pat, I think his name is Patner, was kind of one of those rejects.
Yeah.
Even William Pierce, actually, when he in this book by Dead Man's Deeds by Robert Griffin, referred to Patner as being kind of a guy that gave him a creepy vibe.
It was a patsy.
And
I think it was a patsy job. They had to get rid of him because he was too powerful.
you think so, or do you
I
think
think
it was
so,
just like a
because
disinfacted
if you look
kind
at
of?
the guy who shot him, he was like in and out of jail. They kind of gave him like a light sentence.
Yeah, he was a loser.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
practically a loser.
I think. Well, I mean, this is like common throughout history. They find some loser patsy to do their bidding, and then they kind of like give them a revolving door policy as far as jail is concerned. You know, they want someone to go down for it, so they don't have to get their hands dirty.
Wait, I mean, I like Rockwell. Don't get me wrong. I like him. He's a pivotal figure in the white nationalist movement. Why does nobody talk about Yaki or anybody like that? I wonder why.
It's a bit more esoteric. Like
Really?
not many people have read Imperium or even know it exists. I mean, I didn't even know it existed until about a year and a half ago. So, and I've been around in the circle for a long time. I just never heard of it. You know,
I just wondered, just throwing that out there.
it's also because he wasn't like a really prominent figure at the
No,
time.
he wasn't. He was rejected by so many different fascist groups, and even Rockwell's American Nazi Party rejected him.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why.
Stay in city or move to rural area. Do not and cannot go to college and do not want to fight for Israel. Are you asking me a question, Zeeth, of how you can get better? I don't know how old you are, but if you want to become self-sufficient, you need to.
Just a suggestion, Mimir. You might in the future. I don't know if this will be successful on your channel, but perhaps you could have these self-help streams. I don't know. Maybe
I've already done some stuff.
Oh, okay.
I do videos like that. Sort of. That's if you.
Well, I mean, maybe take people's questions about. I don't know. Maybe take people's questions because there's assholes. There's assholes out there like Aaron Clary that will take your money and give you shitty advice and stuff that you can pretty much research yourself. Yes, I'm name dropping. Aaron Clary sucks. You know, do not pay that guy $100. He's not worth it. And plus, he's 1/4 a Jew.
Yeah, I usually interact with people in the comment section. Yeah, I could set up a white pill stream if anybody wants to see that kind of thing, where prepare a question beforehand, and then even if you want to come in on voice chat on Discord and talk, we can do that. We can get that set up.
Because I think that would help a lot of people out there. Because like I was shocked that there was people as crazy as this person I encountered.
Augustus doesn't know about Yaki. He's never read Imperium. He's asking about him. Yeah, Augustus, look up a book called Imperium 1948. It's a very good book. And Zeeth is asking, should I learn a trade? You should absolutely learn a trade. That's the most important thing you can do.
It depends if like you have potential for college. And
he said he didn't.
Oh, if he didn't?
Yeah, he didn't want to go.
He didn't want to go? Well,
something like that. Hold on.
Become an electrician or something like that, and get into a union if you can.
I do not and cannot go to college. I do not want to fight for Israel. Zeeth, on my channel, I did a video called How to Build Work Ethic and Find a Job. Go check out that video. That video is for you. It's about finding a trade. You don't have the money. Yeah. It's understandable. But I went through.
He doesn't want to die for Zog. I don't blame him. I don't want to die for Zog either.
I would never recommend anyone going into the military. Yeah. Go check that out. Yeah. So let's see. You got any more questions here? Let's see what we got. Sure, I missed something. Oh yeah, Glakun asks, how do we deal with the JQ? Well, simple. Talk about it.
Intelligently, by the way, not just saying it's the Jews.
Yeah, you have to be intelligent about this because
you got to do a little bit. You got to do a little research, and also you got to provide concrete answers, not stuff like it's the synagogue of Satan or like Bible scriptures. You have to actually do the legwork and do the historical research because it's there. E. Michael Jones, Kevin McDonald, other groups of people have done a plethora of research. And it's there, believe me.
Yeah, I mean, but you
might also have to track down very obscure books, and you might have to understand kind of the essence. I'd recommend even studying about the ancient Hebrews, going back that far. We're learning about the Habiru, which are a topic I don't hear very many people drop. There were a group of people called the Habiru that are mentioned in Egyptian text. And I don't want to like shatter anybody's biblical ideology. There are some like sketchy history it's not everything in the Bible's backed up by archaeology. Is what I'm trying to say, and like secular sources from uh, the so-called
Hey,
pagan
hey, guys in the chat,
cultures that surrounded them.
guys in the chat, real quick. I'm not trying to get banned off YouTube, and it's not that I want to censor you guys, but can you keep it like on the down low a little bit more? Like, trust me, I like the memes just as much as anybody else, but I'm really trying hard not to get banned off of here. So if you guys want to see like more
That's something I
content,
didn't learn. I mean, that's something
yeah,
I didn't learn. Maybe next time I get my streaming privileges, I won't get to say, I won't get to say the sacred words I love to say.
exactly. So we have to be careful, and that's my message: is that you have to be strategic. So as much as I enjoy the memes, just be careful. And that goes back to the JQ. Yeah, only a little bit. You got to talk in code words.
I'd say bracket Americans is a pretty good code word.
I like Skypes.
Yeah, Skypes is good. Kayaks.
Kayaks.
Yes, kayaks is good too. Or say my fellow hooked Americans.
Hooked Americans. That's great.
Hooked Americans is another good phrase.
Yeah, one for the 8-8. ATE, and then spelling out the letter 8. Fucking kayaks, yeah. Interest and hero. Talking about monetization. I don't know if you heard it earlier, but I'm not into the whole monetization thing. Like, I appreciate it, but I don't feel the need to take any money from anybody. This movement isn't about me. It's not about the money. It's about the people involved, and think it's more important than that. So if it comes a time where I have a large enough following that people want me to dedicate more time to this, and I might consider it. But even then, it's like
no merchandise. We're not going to see any Mimir's heads t-shirts.
I'm going to make one for myself just because I think it would be kind of funny.
Okay.
I'm not going to sell them. And also, I want you to spend your money on yourself and your family. Buy books. Spend a little bit more money.
Buy exercise equipment so you can attract a girl. Buy weights so you can actually attract the real female, not a waifu pillow.
Yeah, spend the money on yourself. Don't spend it on some YouTube personality or literal talking head. So, let's see. What time should a young man get married? Well, it depends, because as a man, you have multiple options. You can try and get married at 18 to 21, but the problem is most 18 to 21-year-olds don't know how to pick a woman, so they're going to end up divorced at 25, which is what you don't want.
Especially if they're raised by a single mother. If you're raised by a single mother, your chances of like finding a woman at an early age is like you got to do some you might have to do some extra soul searching there.
You also remember, as a man, you don't hit your peak until you're 30. So you can chase after some younger tail, like in their early 20s. You can chase after women in their early 20s and get with them. It's not like you're not going to hit a wall at 30. That's your stepping prime, man.
That hits the wall.
Exactly. So you can always chase younger tail. I mean,
and I hate to say it, but in our modern, as much as we talk about not having shekels, but having a source of shekels, unless you live in like a wholesome environment in a more rural area, the amount of shekels you have is going to depend on the quality of female you
people
get.
Around you. Yeah.
Well, the people around you and the female you get. Unfortunately, that's the case.
I know people are really excited to have kids as soon as possible, but if you're not prepared, you're going to ruin it. And so you're going to do more good do more harm than good. So you got to be careful. This whole stream is about being careful, being strategic, being smart. So, I think the optimal age is between 28 and 33 years old for men, and between 18 and 25 for women, essentially. I mean, you don't have to be so focused on age unless they're over 30. You can okay, she's 27, she's getting up there, but if she's a high quality woman, those are rare. You need to lock that shit down. Let's see what else. What are the current goals of the alt-right? Well, the alt-right isn't a political movement. I made this very clear. It's a big tent movement, and the only goal is to awaken consciousness and answer a bunch of questions about bracket Americans. That's about it.
That's what it seems like for now.
Yep. And a lot of people like to talk shit on Trump, but I mean, he did seem he woke up a lot of people.
I mean, Trump was okay from the beginning,
don't support him.
Now it seems like he's giving Israel $3.1 billion. I read the whole AIPAC thing, and I'm not extremely pleased by that.
Are you talking about the omnibus spending bill?
Yeah, the spending bill.
Okay, here's something I heard interesting, and I'm not going to speak to the validity of this, but it was put out there, and there's some links on 4chan you can go read if you want. Essentially, an omnibus spending bill is not a federal budget.
Okay.
The spending does not have to go where it said it is going. So essentially, Trump just gave himself a free $81 billion to spend wherever he wants to. So what you do is you appoint someone to a department that you want that's in your interest, and then you give them the money. This is what Obama did when he passed the omnibus spending bill.
I see.
So
let's hope that doesn't diffuse into Israel, though, and like the pockets of neocons.
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like whether you believe the president is already picked beforehand and that Trump was just a patsy or whatever, I don't know. There's no way to really prove that. But as far as as far as reality is concerned, he was better than Hillary. Don't support him. Don't be a blind magatard, because he is, very heavily involved in Zog. But for God's sakes, credit where credit is due. Let's see. Zeeth says, I'm part Italian. Should I return to my mother's homeland? Would it be safer for my children there? Since it's
That's not a serious question.
Well, I'm going to answer it because maybe it is serious. If you're American, you don't really have any claims to European land. I'm sorry. Like, we have a blood connection and maybe a cultural connection in some aspects, but you have no rights to the land or resources there. That's for them.
You did say Italians are non-white, so I think that's where that came from.
I was just joking, but yeah, Avalon says he was and is primarily a stay of execution so we could gather resources. And, credit where credit is due. He woke up a lot of people to the right-wing question and inspired a lot of young men to turn towards the right. He's a populist figure, so I have to give him credit there.
Who is that you just read? That's not the legendary, is it?
No, Avalon Vale.
Okay, never mind. I thought you said Evalion. My bad.
No. A pressure release valve, yeah. Sorry, Zeeth. It's just we don't really have any ties. I don't know if you speak Italian, but you're not a part of the culture. You didn't grow up there. You have no real ties to the land except for kinship. And I think it'd be great to visit there. But as far as like living there, oh man, it's a hard question. I think you're better off staying here in the States and helping here.
I mean, where does that leave like white Americans? White Americans are kind of a people. I mean, we have an identity, but we don't have a specific type of ethnicity. We got white, and that's
you can still claim the ethnicity because you still come from there.
But it feels kind of generic to do so. It feels kind of, it just doesn't feel authentic.
Oh, hey, Zeeth, if you have a recent connection to Italy, you have a birthright to go there. But most people like me, my ancestors came here in the 16th century, so I don't really have any connections to the homeland. I've been here forever. But if you have, like a grandparent that lives there, then yeah, you have a birthright that's slightly different. Sorry, I should have clarified that. What's the best genetic test to get? Hard to say. I went with Ancestry because they weren't as paused as the other services. Definitely don't get 23andMe. Definitely don't do that, but there are some alternatives. And what do I think about New Zealand? Do you think it should be balkanized? I honestly don't know too much about New Zealand. I know that there's lots of Asians there.
They have a crisis now where Chinese people are buying up land.
Yeah, they need to enforce their borders the same as everywhere else in the world. But as far as balkanization go, I just don't have enough information. I'm sorry. I'd have to look into it.
They might want to limit land ownership to, only inhabitants instead of a foreign interest. Otherwise, they're going to be a condition where I think parts of Canada are now, where like the Chinese are just buying up the land and running.
Yeah, the western part of Canada is basically China 2.0. We talked about this yesterday on the.
Which I don't hear a lot of ethno-nationalists talking about that either. I mean, I hear them talking about Nogs and other minority groups, but they never talk about the Chinese.
Well, I mean, I have sort of like a mutual maybe friendship with East Asians because they're at least semi-decent people.
Honorary.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Japan, they're pretty goddamn based.
They are based. No. Japanese are based, but Chinese, they can be.
Yeah, The
Not so much though.
Chinese, they can be pretty goddamn soulless, like ants. So I don't really
They
know.
are
I'm
ant
not,
people.
and just because I think that they're kind of, they're kind of on the same level as us doesn't mean I want them here in the country. Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
Well, it's mainly talking about their land grab.
Yeah, and they're very pro-communist, so they're very empiricist or imperialist. Sorry, Jesus.
They don't act like communists though.
Well, yeah, because if they did, they would starve to death. So they have to live in a mixed system. Asians don't tend to set off our immune response so much because they don't cause too many symptoms until they do. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely no way I want integration, but I recognize their superiority to other non-whites.
No Asian waifu. No Asian waifu for you.
No yellow fever here. I'm sorry. Yeah, don't rely on the yellow man to save your ass.
Jew does fear the samurai, though.
Yeah, Jews do fear the samurai. That's for sure. She does not live there, but she still speaks Italian. She seems to want to go back there pretty badly. Her husband is Italian as well. Yeah, Seth, I mean, if your grandparents are thinking about going back, use that as a way to get into the country. Definitely. Very good. Yeah, I wouldn't fuck with us either. Any more questions out there, everybody? We've been going for about an hour and a half now. Yeah, stop being a weeaboo. It's not productive. Embrace your own culture first.
Hey, I'll do as I wish, there, sir.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. There's some pretty good old anime out there, like Ghost in the Shell and NGE. Pretty good stuff.
Akira's pretty good. Death Note's
pretty good too. But all this new shit is garbage, and you should embrace your real culture first.
Which is, I hope for most people, it's not Walmart, shopping malls, suburban cul-de-sacs, and
yeah, that's not your culture either. Let's see. Predictions for Europe. One of two ways. They're either going to go into complete collapse and there's going to be a very violent civil war, or they can take back their countries and remove the parasites.
Here's another interesting topic is American civic nationalism. Where exactly did it originate? What did it originate kind of, because I read there's an essay put out by Hunter Wallace over at Occidental Descent, I think, that said he persisted that civic nationalism kind of was an extension of the French Enlightenment, and that it diffused into American society, and it was embraced earlier in the North, but really rejected kind of in the South. And it was they kind of played musical chairs with with their minorities up north, sometimes giving them a kind of citizenship, sometimes not. Mm-hmm. Even having some kind of Jim Crow kind of early Jim Crow kind of regulations, and then retracting it, and then fighting over it. It's just, I wonder, did civic nationalism originate from the?
It comes out of the French Enlightenment period, yeah. Which is why I always say the Enlightenment was a mistake. People like
in that essay, he makes some interesting points about the JQ and about the present day kind of Dindu problem we have. He says that basically that the early people, with the exception of a few founding fathers, really were not white nationalists. He's saying that they really weren't white nationalists. They kind of were. They weren't really crazy civic nationalists. Now they were saying they believed kind of the inferiority of the African slaves was more to do about the debasement that occurred during slavery. More so, the people in the South just naturally believed it was kind of innate, and that was kind of a lot of contention between the two.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a part of what you could consider American colonial culture for a long time. The sense of unifying force against the British. It didn't really matter. Like the Irish and the French and the Germans, they all fought foreign against the British. So it was like a mishmash of people. So that's where it comes from. It's just it's stuck around since then. You know what I mean? But
I'm saying they're claiming that in earlier times they incorporated the natives and the blacks as well in the North.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they absolutely did. They included basically everybody.
So, I mean, that's interesting. So fundamentally, our civic nationalism comes from Europe, not America.
The foundations did, yeah. They came from France and England. That's primarily where they came from. And then it solidified when we unified against what was perceived as a threat to
Okay.
the land, as the country during the Revolutionary War. And that sparked a whole bunch of other revolutions
Which I find
in the
it
world.
odd that people cite all these Enlightenment thinkers like Locke and Hobbes and all these other people, and they still thought Africans were not really. They didn't really extend kind of the the social contract to Africans or to the others, but yet and still they were still encompassed in that contract kind of in colonial times.
Well, I mean, if you just look at the original immigration policy of America, it was white
Yeah, the
men of good quality
naturalization.
character. Yeah, so they always had this idea, which is funny considering the people who are so pro enlightenment nowadays. They tend to forget that. I got some more questions here. The South Africa question. Yeah, if I was in political power right now, I would absolutely offer any white South African asylum as soon as possible.
I would offer South Africans tracts of land so they can
Yeah.
actually benefit some of the parts of the South that need help from.
Yep. I would probably do something similar to that as well. Augustus says, "I'm going to join the U.S. Army." Don't. Absolutely do not. There's nothing the Army can teach you that you can't teach yourself online or in the real
But
world.
maybe he'll score high enough on the Ashbab where he doesn't have to like do any kind of active service.
I mean, still, you're still contributing to, uh, the
Zog.
the enforcement arm of Israel. I mean, you're essentially joining the IDF. So, bad idea, as far as I'm concerned. Keep your freedom. Keep off the radar. What do you think about pan-Europeanism? I'm against pan-Europeanism. That's where I differ from Richard Spencer. I think it's not going to work, and I want each individual European
Well,
country to preserve their culture.
Pan European principles won't work because I think already it's demonstrated that through European history that's a bad idea. I.e., look at the Balkans.
Well, they're also kind of low intelligence, but
Oh man, don't diss the Slavs like that.
no, the Balkans, not the Slavs. The
Oh,
Balkans
okay.
are like I'm talking about like Jippos and all the
Oh,
Muslims
the
there.
Vlachs. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, the Albanians. Okay.
yeah. They're it's a little bit different, but no, I want France to be French. I want Germany to be German. I want Britain to be British.
Are Mimirs? Are you an IQ nationalist?
I'm actually a boomer nationalist. Thank you.
A boomer
I,
nationalist.
I'm a
Okay.
boomer nationalist. I only listen to boomer tunes.
Only boomer. Okay, boomer tech.
Yeah. But yeah, so each there should be a unifying force that kind of puts Europe together like on a friendly basis, like alliance, but there shouldn't be like one government. The EU is a failure and it always will be. So any system like that tries to unify Europe under one government is going to fail. Uh, Glockun asks, "What's my educational background?" I went to college for like 2 years and I dropped out because it was boring, and I got top 5% of my class in high school. So I mean that's about it really. Johnny Rebel. Johnny Rebel's funny. His music is really funny. It's not really like it's not normie friendly though.
I'm an Alabama, and you're Auburn green.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, national sovereignty and autonomy, but cooperation between borders. I imagine this. I have this picture in my head, and I wish I could put it down on paper, where it's one person. It's like they're like two people standing on top of a globe, and they're like shaking hands, and underneath their hands is like a big border wall, and like one side is waving a French flag, and the other side's waving like a German flag. That's what I envision. I want them to be separate but equal in sort of like a kinship.
Well, here's a question. Do you think the invincibility of the alt right has a lot to do with their amorphous kind of stance, where they don't really encompass like one point? Like it's a whole kind of collective of ideologies.
It has its
You
pros
know?
and cons. Like like I said, the primary goal is not political
Yeah,
action
but
per
it seems
se.
like it's undefeatable. Like you can't defeat it like in a debate. You can't contest a lot of it. It seems pretty.
Uh,
It seems pretty like kind of
it's
airtight.
it's a curse and a blessing because it causes a lot of confusion, but it diffuses the attack. So like you can't label an entire group of people as
Well,
one thing or
it's a
the other.
leaderless resistance.
Exactly, yeah. So it's both good and bad, and I think the good outweighs the bad.
I noticed there's an uptick in a lot of there on Harvard publishing houses of like trying to cover this whole militia stuff and this whole kind of try to tie the alt-right in with all these previous movements. You know?
Zeeth, real quick. I don't want to put people in the Midwest because it's not a good economic decision. We need coastal access to trade. That's an absolute reality. And I think that Arya Dharma asked me a question but didn't tag me. If you want to ask a question, make sure you tag me so I can see it because there's lots of chat messages on my second monitor. People spiritual. Yeah, I think yours will be alone enough the framework to create. Yeah, there's a spiritual component that I talk about a lot. So if you're curious about that, I've done some videos on spirituality. Eleanor Vidikind in the chat. That's what they're saying. Well, if we balkanize the U.S., we can take back the coast.
What about the argument, though, that people often make against balkanization that would destroy the economy of America? Like, that's what I've heard people actually. That's the only legitimate kind of criticism I've heard of it.
No, I piss on the economy. We can go straight to hell. I'd rather.
I'm with you.
I'd rather, I'd rather be a caveman, than a super paused bug man with my comic books and my cartoons. Like, we don't need all this super tech. Like, we don't need like all this like consumerist shit. Like we don't need an economy that's so. It's like you look at that thing where if everyone in the world lived like an American, we would need the resources of like 5 different Earths, right? It's not sustainable. The economy that we're in is not sustainable. The technology is, but the way that people interact with these resources is not. It's cancerous. Yeah, cave beast nationalism.
Hell yeah, cave beast nationalism.
Yeah, the economy, but in brackets. Anyone who thinks that their shekels are more important than their people is super.
A lot of libertarian bugmen believe that.
Oh, absolutely, lots of autistic ones.
They're like, "Who's gonna build the roads? I'm gonna read Walter Block and Rothbard."
Me, motherfucker, I'll build the roads. We use the state to put people to work.
By the way, have you read Walter Block? Have you read that libertarian thinker?
I'm sure he's come up, but I can't remember him. He must not have been very
pretty
good.
much just tells you how to be a slumlord. Just make money off slums. That's
he wants to be a feudal
That's the central premise of his book.
Well, he sounds like a kayak, so
he is. How'd you know?
Oh, my detector is going off. It's beeping in my hand.
You're better.
Interesting Hero says, have you been watching the shit show going on Gab for the past month? No, I haven't. You want to enlighten me on that? I don't really get on Gab too much, even though I'm on there. I might just want to go out and live in the wild. Zeeth and Black Sun talking about Varg. Going off and living in the woods and being a homesteader is great until you realize that that's exactly what some people would want you to do.
That's what I'm going to do.
It reduces your collective power. So you're going to need some people in the cities because the cities greatly outnumber the rural as far as political power is concerned because they're so centralized.
Well, they are kind of the financial hub, but unfortunately, most of that financial hub is kind of off limits to most people. It's only for a chosen few.
Yeah, I know the cities are gay, but you can't just run away from your problems. This is what white flight has been doing for years, where people run off into the countryside. It's not working. It's not an effective strategy.
Are you sure they ran off to the countryside and not just into suburbs? That was just outlocated.
The suburbs used to be countryside. That's where they ran to. They built
really,
yeah. Because I remember a couple back in the early 2000s, we moved out to what were the new suburbs, and it was all countryside. I mean, we had cows in our backyard and fishing on the river behind us. It was countryside. And now it's like the center of new suburbia. That's what happens.
Yeah, but can most like average people afford the cities? Like, can they afford like the large cities? I don't know if that's true. Like New York, no.
Well, New York and San Francisco and LA are special examples, but Atlanta.
Okay, Atlanta. Atlanta's not really a city, in my opinion.
It's a zoo.
It's not. Yeah, it is a zoo. Open air.
There are plenty of. There are plenty of urban environments where it's relatively cheap to live. You just got to find them, like St. Louis and Chicago and Detroit. I know those are all zoos too, but it's cheap to live there. All the big cities.
Yes,
in Texas,
of course it's cheap. It's because of reasons.
Yeah, I'm just saying. If you want to make a change, you can't run away from your problems. You got to man up and do it.
So are you saying gentrification is like gentrification nationalism?
Absolutely. That's my new political platform.
That's your new okay. Gentrify,
A
gentrify or die,
Starbucks on
right?
a Starbucks on every ghetto corner.
Gentrify or die, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely eye-opening a lot of whites because they come into like those ladies that opened up like a cat cafe in the ghetto and they got like bricks through their windows. How red pill do you think those people are now?
Uh, I'd actually like to talk to him.
There's a literal mob of border jumpers like protesting their business. How do you think that makes them feel? And they're calling them racial slurs and
Yeah, they're
you know,
imperialist. They'll say you're a colonist, you're a
yeah.
modern day colonist, you're imperialist, evil whitey.
Yeah, Zeke, trust me, man, I understand your opinion, but that's black pill talk. We're not about that here. We're about white pill talk. We want to win. Victory is the highest virtue here.
I don't know,
Besides
Mimir.
strength.
You might convince me not to. I mean, I don't know. I've pretty much made up my mind about homesteading.
I mean, look, homesteading is great, but it's not going to work for everybody. So if you tell everybody to go out and do it, you're basically telling everyone to abandon any capability we have of taking back city centers, which are necessary. I mean, they're the home of production, the home of industry for a lot of regions. So, moving to the countryside
But
is
who?
great, but
My question about that is, who without a trust fund can really gentrify a inner city area or like
I
because
mean,
a lot of these town centers are off limits to us because of the wildlife that inhabit it.
I make a decent income and I could do it. It's
Okay.
easy. You just gotta organize and unify. It's
Okay.
very easy to coordinate because these people are too stupid to fight back. And then what you have to do is you have to take this into real life politics.
I don't know. These
And
trust fund kids might be a little selfish and might prefer, shooting up drugs as opposed to like any kind of nationalism. That's from personal experience, what I've encountered with them. Hello?
yeah, sorry. As Arya says, only the most hardy nationalists will take a stand in a metropolitan area. It's true. If you really have some grit in your gut, you're going to want to take a stand and make a change. So
Good luck with that.
homestead
Most of your
homesteading is good for. Well, the problem
most
is
of
that
your
people like.
urbanized whites are soy boys, though. Good
Well,
luck
you're
with
gonna have
that.
to fucking change them too. But people like Varg who say that homesteading is the only way are wrong. Sorry, Varg, but it's not going to work for everybody. Not everybody can live like that because that you're essentially stripping yourself of any institutional power if you don't participate in the
Well,
system.
no. Here's a thought though. Why does it have to be necessarily a city though? Why can't you like move to like smaller towns and then consolidate your power that way,
Well,
or
a
kind of
city
move
is
in?
like is only like 100,000 people at
No,
a
I
minimum,
understand,
right?
but like kind of move into like smaller towns and like take over like the
Well, that's not
government.
homesteading.
Well, no, I'm just saying homesteading is like a second option, but like there's for some options, I'd say for some people that are more political savvy, and maybe can't make the inroads in a city because you got to have a social network kind of make the inroads. Could maybe move to a smaller town and kind of take over the politics that way and make that town kind of our town.
Yeah, I'm arguing against people who want to go out and live in the woods like Varg does. That's what I'm arguing against. Not
Okay.
not people moving to towns and cities. And I'm not saying that you have to move to like LA and try to change it there. No, no, no. That's going to be extremely hard. But don't go off and live in the woods, naked and eating berries off the bush like Varg would like to. It's not gonna. You're stripping yourself of any power. Well, interesting here. The federal government can still diversity bomb small white towns. Is the problem? Yeah, of
That's
course they
true.
can.
But if
It's
you
anywhere.
control the government with like the and hopefully get enough of the social proof, you could potentially get not allow that because a lot of these like people the diversity bomb are through Christian charities. It's through Christian charities like Lutheran charities through uh, various different Christian charities like set these Southern Sudanese, these Somalis, and these various different small townships. So you could potentially
Yeah.
like organize your people to protest it and aptly actually pass laws potentially to say we don't want refugees.
Well, Seith, my problem is that some people are advocating for a complete strategy, a single strategy where everyone moves out into the woods and homesteads.
No,
I'm saying that that's not a viable option for everybody. So I take a mixed approach. If you want to do that and you can make it work, great, do it. No problem with that. But for everyone else, unify your power in a small town or a relatively large city. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, don't run away. There's lots of work that needs to be done, and
But I
there's going
have
to
to say
be
good luck because a lot of the power is already there from leftists, even in southern cities. Surprisingly, places like Raleigh, even the
yeah,
leftists
sure,
have all
but
the power there.
yeah, but I mean, it's still defeatism. That's still some black pill shit.
No, I'm
We're on
not
that
saying you
white pill
can't
shit.
take it back. I'm not saying you can't take it back. Hopefully, with this newer generation, they can do it. But
Yeah, exactly.
as it stands, most of the cities, including the ones in the south,
Get in the
are
damn robot, Shinji.
are very paused.
Yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle, but recognizing the struggle and telling people not to do it because of it's a struggle is two different things. Crashing it and rebuilding it is one thing, Zeeth, but that's a possibility. It's not an inevitability as far as I'm concerned. So, I mean, there's an infinite number of things that can happen. We don't know where the winds are really blowing. As far as I know, there's a new right wing on the rise. That's about all we can predict for, and that's all we can really hope for at this point.
This has been apocalypse posting hour.
Yeah, apocalypse posting. But yeah, I mean, there's an infinite number of ways forward, guys. Just keep that in mind. We just kind of have to imagine you're on a sailing ship in like the 18th century and you're going across to America. You just got to work with the winds and try and struggle as much as possible.
And
And I
democracy is that typhoon that knocks you off course.
Yep. So you have to, and this also in this analogy, you got to have a strong leader at the helm directing people. You just got to work with it, and you got to fight through it, and you have to struggle, and eventually you'll get to where you want to go. That's just the reality of the situation. And if anyone thinks it's not possible, read the struggle for Berlin and Mein Kampf. Read what they were doing. They really lay it down exactly the struggles they had to go through to get where they got, but they did it.
Any Strausserites out there?
Oh God. So some politics are genetic, Arya. So if anyone hasn't seen my nature versus nurture video, go check it out. But essentially there is a baseline for your politics that's determined by genetics. But then your environment builds off the top of that. So there is as far as whites are concerned, there is a pathology behind that tends towards empathy and inclusion because that's how we evolved over time. Our winning strategy to live in Europe and survive the harsh winters was to band together and be very inclusive um, to like people who look like us. So we have a lot of empathy and we have a lot of trust within each other. And there have been some Skypes out there who have taken advantage of that and turned it against us. So yeah, lots of people are natural right wing thinkers, but there is an undeniable genetic and an undeniable environmental component to that.
I don't disagree there.
Yeah, we're definitely too nice, but that niceness should be turned on your own people, not to outsiders.
It's utilizing pathological altruism as a weapon, weaponizing it.
Yep, yep. It's a winning strategy if you have strong borders and a good in group.
Yeah, Jewish nepotism.
Yep, exactly. You got to adopt the winning strategy to win, whether you like it or not. All right, final questions from anyone in the chat. Let's go ahead and ask now if you ever hold your peace. We've been going for about 2 hours now, so I was naturally racist. I had to be reprogrammed, and then I found Paul. Yep, pretty much. People are naturally like that. Yeah, gas the stream. Oh yeah, sorry. Eleanor, I forgot to answer your question. My bad. We got off on a tangent. What do you think about subverting the left to fight for us without them realizing? Absolutely. That is one of my strategies I don't talk about enough because you have to keep it a secret. That goes back to our secret society discussion. You're going to have to subvert people because, subversion is a winning strategy. Whether you think it's honorable or not, it's a goddamn winning strategy. If you want to win, if you hold victory as a high value, as the highest virtue,
I
then I
would
have
say
to do it.
also like infiltrate these like these like charity organizations in like urban areas where like infiltrate them. Like even if tell them you're an Antifa member, tell them you're a leftist or whatever. Just go in there and actually divert their funds. Divert their funds away from them. Cause disorder within the organization. I mean, whatever.
You can and then James also talked about this in his Identity Europa speech recently. You can go into like the Republican Party, get their donor list, and then use that to push your political
That too.
motives.
That too.
Yeah, well, Sargon is a social justice warrior, as far as I'm concerned. He spurts out about the alt right in the same way that the leftists do. So,
The
and as far
white
as I'm concerned,
niggers. White
yeah,
niggers.
he's a leftist just as much as anyone else. So, we're not talking about acceleration or agitation. We're talking about using them to further our goals, using people as political tools. That's why I'm in favor of allying with different groups of nationalists, whether they be black, white, or Chinese, because we can use them as political tools to further our interests. Yeah, Republicans have been subverted, so it's time for us to take them back. Yeah, Bugs Bunny, I want white feminists promoting some pro-white talking points. Yeah, the further that the black intersectional feminists push white people like out through white racism, they're going to wake up. So there you go. It's a win-win situation almost. Interesting and hero. Yeah, I mean, some people aren't going to wake up until their backs are against the wall. It's just an inevitability. But there is definitely steps we can take to sort of accelerate that by simply memeing people online. Duck supremacy. I tried allying with some black nationalists, but found they are too retarded to understand our common interest.
That is true.
Well,
I've actually I've come up with that as well. They don't understand white interest, and they look upon it as suspicion, and I don't think they have kind of the abstract thinking to embrace a lot of the concepts.
You have to take on the white man's burden when you're talking about political
Oh
subversion.
man,
you got to lead them and use them as tools to further your own interests.
Kind of like hooked Americans do.
Yeah, I mean, they're just, I don't want to call them useful idiots, but I mean, that's essentially what they are.
I mean, are there any like rational, logical thinking black nationalists out there that actually want to talk?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd like to see them, and not just that guy T, but somebody else.
I've spoken to a few of them in real life.
Okay, cool.
They're out there. They're kind of rare, but they're out there in the communities doing stuff.
Well, good.
All right. Well, let's let the chat filter out here. Yeah, they're very dense, but I think you can use them as a tool. I mean, you at least have to try. I haven't heard of TNN Raw. You'll have to educate me on that sometime.
That's Tommy Sotomayor.
Oh, yeah, Tommy Sotomayor. Yeah, I've heard of him. I think there was one more question. Nice stream. Opinion on Hitler. Please do this more often, from 3 different people. Next week, I think we'll be devoid of any streams because I have to work all week, but I'll still be doing videos. And if you, let's see. Oh, this is interesting. Glaucon Con. To what extent will the race mixing agenda succeed? It actually, statistically, it hasn't been succeeding. It's only a media narrative at this point. There's still a majority of people who stick to their own, with the exception of black females.
It seems like the lower classes, though, there's been a lot of mixing. I mean, I don't have statistics on that, but just from kind of anecdotal stuff I get from like walking around and observing.
Even amongst the lower classes, it's still pretty solid. The stats are there.
So I guess it's just the Walmart effect.
Yep. It's just the things you see in the media and the things you see paraded around.
I see.
Well, I think that'll about wrap things up.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Mimir. I appreciate it.
Yeah, everyone go subscribe to the backup channel for Gunshine. It's in the description below.
Yes, please do. And I will actually run streams like this and try to get some interesting people on there. I've been trying to So I've been trying to expand my topics from just just complaining about minorities to talking about Jews to actually talking about some relevant issues.
Yep.
I'd like to talk to some very relevant like working class issues, especially. That's kind of my interest right now.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate everyone coming out. We hit a record of 42 viewers, I think, at one point, which is pretty damn good. So appreciate everyone coming out. And thanks for watching. Peace.
Peace.